Well, good evening, Dean Taylor, and welcome to the fans on 62 Country WTMT for the live flag-to-flag coverage of tonight's Kroger Bluegrass 300. Scott Walters and Keith Gardner, both out of Louisville, Kentucky. And how fittingly they should lead the field to the green flag for our most prestigious stock car racing event of the 1996 racing season. Into turns 1 and 2, and it's Walters out front. He hops out front 4 car lengths over Keith Gardner. Rick Crawford in car number 14 dropping down into second, while Stephen Kristen runs at 4th spot. They cross the start-finish line. Former champion Mike Cope rides 5th. They're in single file throughout the top 10 as they move into turns 1 and 2. Now Ron Young making the pass on the inside of Tammy Jo Kirk, moving up, and now the field has gone to single file across the start-finish line as they complete lap number 2. It's Scott Walters of Louisville, Kentucky out front. Onto the backstretch area now with a 4-car length advantage over the number 98 machine of Keith Gardner. Cope drops to the inside of Stephen Christian and picks up a spot now as Cope runs in the number 4 spot, again a former series champion, the Penrose Meat Snacks Racing Chevrolet. As we look back through the field now, we have Ron Young and Roland Isaacs racing together just outside the top 10 in the running order. Tammy Jo Kirk moves her lovable Racing Chevrolet down to the inside of Roland Isaacs into turn number 1 and picks up a position as well. They're onto the backstretch area. So far, a good run tonight for Bill Kimmel Jr. in the number 69 Microsoft Racing Chevrolet as he chases down the number 28 machine of Kurt Huff into turns 1 and 2. Kimmel sits just inside the top 10 in the running order at this time. If he is not 10th, he is about 11th right now in the lineup as they move on to the front straightaway. The race leader continues to be Scott Walters in car number 55 as he chases down some of the slower traffic now and begins to lap some of the back markers in the field as he comes out of turn number 4. Good battle developing for the number 3 spot now is Rick Crawford in the number 14 machine. Moving over to turn number 3 has the 57 of Mike Cope closing in to within about 3 car lengths of him as they cross the start-finish line and head back into turns 1 and 2. Out front, it's Scott Walters in the number 55 out of Louisville, Kentucky, the ABC Neon and Sign Southern Metal Products Racing Chevrolet as he moves on to the front straightaway. The number 98 of Keith Gardner, the Anson Gas Grill and Fireside Shops, Auburndale Auto Parts and Machine, Chevy Monte Carlo at second as they move over to turn number 3, and it looks like Gardner is chasing down Scott Walters for that number 1 spot. Gardner taking his time, Walters for that matter, taking his time moving around the slower lap traffic, and that has allowed Keith Gardner to close in on him now, and he has cut the interval down between first and second place to about 3 car lengths. The race leaders move out of turn number 4 and down the front straightaway now with 16 of 300 laps completed. Yep, trouble up in turn number 4. It's only 1 car involved up against the outside retaining wall, and it looks like very minimal damage, if any, was done to that machine, but it brings out our first caution flag period at lap number 17 and it was, I believe, for car number 33, who had spun down in turn number 4. And again, a very tricky part of the track to maneuver. Turn number 1 is by far the sharpest corner on the track. But turn number 4 is the second sharpest corner. Conrad Burr, the Burr Construction Chevrolet, was the first car involved down in turn number 4 and the only car involved. And you can tell by the length of those skid marks coming out of turn number 3 that car went on a long slide. But Dean Taylor, it looks like he did very minimal damage to the car, if any at all. And it looks like that he has started the machine up and pulls away. And it looks like he has every intention of rejoining the field.
Going to loop his number 33 car and around behind the rest of the field. There's all the damages up front, Frank. That's on the side that you can't see right now as he rolls down the front straightaway. But the front quarter panel right in front of the wheel in the nose cone section of the car, that is pushed in. Not sure if that's running or not. That could be a factor. He'll more than likely be able to figure it out as he falls in behind the field now.
Conrad Burr is on pit road. He started in the 25th starting spot in the field, but again, it looks like it's some substantial damage to the left front of that car as the hood and the left front fender has been torn away or possibly taken away by the pit crew. And again, the repairs begin on the left front of Conrad Burr's machine. He had lost a lap after spinning on the front straightaway, or should I say in turn number 4, and has lost an additional lap while being serviced in the pit area. After 20 laps of competition, Louisville, Kentucky's Scott Walters continues to set the pace here tonight at Louisville Motor Speedway. Also, the 4-time late model champion of Louisville Motor Speedway, Keith Gardner, continues to run at second. Regular series competitor Rick Crawford in the number 14 Ford Thunderbird runs at third. Former champion of the NASCAR Slim Jim All-Pro Series, Mike Cope, runs fourth. And rounding out the top 5, Stephen Christian in the Bell South Chevrolet, rounding out the top 5. So that's the way they look after 21 laps of competition in the Kroger Bluegrass 300.
Stacks up, getting ready for a possible restart. The bottom of the Chevy start dropping down to the midfield.
That's Jeff Fultz, the King Motorsports Chevrolet, in an 8th place starting spot in the field, but it looks like he has developed some type of mechanical problems. He picks up speed here on the front straightaway, but it looks like he might be headed to the pit area. Did a real quick check of the running order inside the top 10, and Bill Kimmel Jr. has moved around the number 4 of Ron Woods onto the back straightaway, and he has picked up the number 7 position in the field. So Bill Kimmel Jr., the current points leader in the late model division here at Louisville Speedway, has a fine run going inside the top 10. He joins race leaders Scott Walters and Keith Gardner as 3 of the Louisville area drivers are now inside the top 10 in the running order. Trouble over in turn number 2 as Buddy Fannin out of Louisville, Kentucky, and it looked like a small fire was underneath the engine compartment of that car. He safely pulled it off into the infield portion of the turn 2 area, and the rescue workers have walked over to that machine. However, it looks like the fire quite possibly extinguished itself. But Buddy Fannin of Louisville, Kentucky is definitely looking like he is out of the race event. A tough break for Buddy Fannin. We're 31, soon to be 32 laps into the Kroger Bluegrass 300 here tonight at Louisville Speedway. as Scott Walters continues to lead this race event. They move down into turns 1 and 2. Keith Gardner in the number 98 Chevrolet Monte Carlo, the Anson Gas Grill and Fireside Shops Racing Monte Carlo, really puts the pressure on Walters as they exit turn number 4. Meanwhile, we've had a change up for third in the lineup now as Mike Cope in his number 57 Penrose Meat Snack Chevrolet has moved up and taken over third place after making the move around Rick Crawford's Ford Thunderbird. The race leaders are on the front straightaway now, 34 laps completed. Mike Cope definitely made severe contact to the back of Keith Gardner's car exiting turn number 2, turning the number 98 machine around over in the second turn area. And the caution flag comes out with 35 laps completed. But a tough break for Keith Gardner in car number 98 after his car was struck from the rear by Mike Cope's number 57, the Penrose Meat Snack Chevrolet, making contact to the 98 of Gardner, turning Gardner's car around over in turn 2. And the sign board goes out as Kevin Gardner and the rest of the team, the Gardner Racing team, goes to work on the left front fender of the number 98. Keith Gardner, the 4-time late model champion here at Louisville Speedway. The fender is pulled away, and now Keith pulls from the pit stall and onto the track. But again, we don't know if he lost a lap or not in that maneuver. They're back under green here tonight at Louisville Speedway in the Kroger Bluegrass 300. Into turns 1 and 2, and Scott Walters of Louisville, Kentucky continues to lead, but Mike Cope in the number 57 puts the pressure on Walters as they move over to turn number 4 and onto the front straightaway. Remember how he got around Gardner? Let's see if he goes to the rear bumper of Scott Walters to make a maneuver as well. Meanwhile, Keith Gardner is caught up to the tail of the field now, and again, we're not sure if he is on the lead lap or not. However, he has chased down the tail of the field and keeps that car at least from going another lap, if at least one at all, to the field. It's Walters out front, but again, Mike Cope keeps the pressure on Walters as they move out of turn number 4 and onto the front straightaway. Over to turn number 3, Walters still has a slight advantage over Mike Cope, but it's Cope who has the inside advantage. Cope leads at lap number 47, heading into turns 1 and 2. Walters quickly hustles back on the outside lane, but it looks like Walters is having difficulty keeping the car on the inside, holding it lower through the turns than Mike Cope is, and that has cost him the lead spot for the moment. Right now he runs at second, but Rick Crawford dives down to the inside of him, and now they catch up with the slower lap traffic near the tail of the field. Gardner moving around the inside of Spanx Overbeck. Overbeck now following Gardner into turns 1 and 2, but the race leader, Mike Cope, is right there behind him as they head into turns 1 and 2. Rick Crawford has now taken away the second place spot. They're over in turn number 3, and the race leaders are in heavy traffic. They're in single file formation throughout the top 5, maybe 6 in the running order as they cross the start-finish line now with 52 laps completed. The race leader continues to be Mike Cope in the number 57, the Penrose Meat Snack Chevrolet. He dives underneath Keith Gardner to attempt to put him at least a lap down to the field. Pulls up side by side with him, but they have a slower car right ahead of them as they head back into turns 1 and 2. The number 0 now of Stephen Christian has moved up into the number 2 spot after moving around Rick Crawford as they move on to the back straightaway area. Meanwhile, Scott Walters drops back to the number 4 position after leading through the first 47 laps, and they move back into turns 1 and 2. Trouble on the front straightaway. Owensboro, Kentucky's Brad Payne got sideways and clipped one of the tire barriers here on the front straightaway. For the moment, we remain green flag racing as the number 22 spins around. Now it looks like Brad has restarted the car and perhaps may try to pull back onto the front straightaway, but that remains to be seen. Coming up now with 59 laps completed here tonight at Louisville Motor Speedway in the Kroger Bluegrass 300. Brad Payne now rejoins the field, but I believe he has lost at least a lap or so spinning here on the front straightaway, and he was not on the lead lap at the time of the spin as well. The number 57 of Mike Cope continues to lead. Running at second, it's the number 0 of Stephen Christian, the Bell South Racing Chevrolet. Running at third, it's the number 14 of Rick Crawford, followed by Scott Walters of Louisville, Kentucky, and Hank Parker Jr. rounds out the top 5 as they move on to the front straightaway now with 61 laps now completed. And car number 1, who had entered this special race event here tonight at Louisville Speedway, is now 1 lap down to the race leaders as Keith Gardner remains again unofficially on the lead lap, but Mike Cope keeps following him through the heavy race traffic. Now Cope dives down to the inside of Gardner, trying to put him at least a lap down, but cannot find the racing room he needs. Meanwhile, Stephen Christian in the Bell South Chevrolet, currently running at second, has chased down Mike Cope and begins challenging for the lead. Problems on Bill Kimmel Jr. in car number 69. He was running inside the top 10 in the running order, but it looks like the Microsoft Chevrolet is slowing over in turn number 3. Dean Taylor? So it looks like Bill Kimmel Jr. is going to bring Bill Petroff's Microsoft Chevrolet down pit road. And again, a possible problem on that car. Can't speculate as to what the problem may be on the number 69, but he pulls to the pit area in the infield, and the crew quickly consults the driver first, but it looks like they might be going underneath the hood. 69 laps, now 70 completed here tonight at Louisville Speedway. The race leader continues to be Mike Cope in the number 57, the Penrose Meat Snack Chevrolet. Running at second is Stephen Christian in the number 0, Bell South Racing Chevy Monte Carlo. Rick Crawford goes third, Scott Walters at fourth, and Hank Parker Jr. rounding out the top 5. Then running 6, it's Ron Young, followed by, again, just speculating, the number 52 of Tammy Jo Kirk, although Chad Bland is directly ahead of her as they come out of turn number 4 and down the front straightaway. Roland Isaacs follows Tammy Jo into turns 1 and 2, and then just behind Roland Isaacs is Chuck Winders, former champion here at Louisville Speedway. Surprisingly few number of caution flag periods in this race event. A racetrack that the Craftsman Truck Series calls one of the most challenging on its tour, as we experienced 11 caution flag periods in the 225-lap Ford Dealers race event here earlier this summer at Louisville Speedway. However, we've only experienced a couple of caution flag periods so far inside the first 77 laps of this race event. The race leader continues to be Mike Cope, but he's got some company up front in Stephen Christian, the number 0 machine, as he chases Cope into turns 1 and 2. Meanwhile, and I'm surprised that Cope has not been able to get around Keith Gardner. Again, we're just speculating. Again, that Gardner may be on the lead lap. But again, unofficially, he might be a lap down to the field. However, Cope was not able to get around Gardner, and he remains, Gardner for the moment, remains about 6-7 car lengths ahead of Cope as they move out of turn number 4, and they collect lap number 80. They're back into turns 1 and 2. Over in turn number 2 as the number 0 of Stephen Christian just drove by the number 57 of Mike Cope. Cope encountered the rear of Gardner's car again going into turns 1 and 2. but this time it was Gardner, and he came out on the good end of that one as Cope lost several positions there in that mishap in turns 1 and 2. So I guess it's a turnabout is fair play, and so to speak, in the night's running of the Kroger Bluegrass 300. Still don't help Gardner out any. He hasn't made up any spots, but he has not at least lost another lap yet to the race leaders. Yep, Toby Porter's down on pit road. He came into the race event at second place in the point standings. He's having an excellent season on the Slim Jim All-Pro Series circuit. But tonight, I mean, he didn't qualify that well. And my guess is that they might have an engine problem on the car, something that's been apparent ever since the practice sessions earlier here this afternoon. So Toby Porter is down on pit road. It looks like they're taking on outside tires. But again, I believe his problem is much more than that. Yep, no caution flag out as of yet. And probably the worst news for Stephen Christian is Gardner has started up and is back in the race event, because we know what happened to Mike Cope when he made contact with the back of Gardner's car. Stephen Christian, we might see a little action out of him yet as well. We'll see what happens. We're coming up now, 95, 96 laps completed, approaching the 1/3 of the distance here tonight in the Kroger Bluegrass 300. Laps completed, 1/3 of the distance here tonight at Louisville Speedway, as we have Steve Christian, the race leader now, and he's finally gotten around Keith Gardner going into turns 1 and 2. Rick Crawford currently runs at second. He'll have to contend with Gardner and does so down to the inside over in turn number 3. Scott Walters runs at third. Going forward, it's Hank Parker Jr., and then rounding out the top 5, it's Mike Cope in the number 57 machine. Ron Young is currently in the number 6 spot, and then unofficially Chad Bland running 6th, and then back to 7th spot unofficially Tammy Jo Kirk. Then we find Roland Isaacs, and then the number 8 machine of Chuck Winders. So again, several Louisville drivers still inside the top 10 in the running order after 1/3 of the distance is completed here tonight at Louisville Speedway. Trouble down in turn number 1 as one car is turned around. It'll bring out the caution flag. And it again, it looks like Spanx Overbeck cut down a right front tire on the back straightaway area. However, that was not the reason for the caution. But one car turning in turn number 1, it looks like it was perhaps the number 83 of Derek Gilchrist. And the car spinning around down in turn number 1, and a left front fender pulled away from that 1996 Pontiac Grand Prix. So we find ourselves experiencing our third caution flag period of the Kroger Bluegrass 300 with 107 laps completed here tonight. And the pace car picks up the race leader Stephen Christian in the Bell South Chevrolet. Running at second, it's the number 14 of Rick Crawford, driving a 96 Ford Thunderbird, the Circle Bar Motel and RV Park Ford. Going third, Louisville, Kentucky, Scott Walters in the ABC Neon and Sign Southern Metal Products Racing Chevrolet. And then running the number 4 spot, it's the Delco Freedom Racing Chevy, the number 86 of Hank Parker Jr. Rounding out the top 5, it's the number 57 of Mike Cope.
Activity, 111 laps now showing on our Winston Racing Series board, right?
Well, I tell you again, Dean, although some of the Louisville area drivers have suffered some misfortunes, we still have quite a few running inside the top 10 in the running order. Scott Walters, as well as it looks like Roland Isaacs and Chuck Winders are up near the front of the field inside the top 10 as we go back to green flag racing. They move back into turns 1 and 2. Stephen Christian, the race leader, he qualified 4th in the lineup here tonight, but finds himself out front here after 112 laps of competition. 3 caution flag periods so far. And again, a race of this nature usually draws upon the yellow flag on several more occasions than we have experienced. Larry Metters going into turns 1 and 2, and it looks like his car glides up the banking. Did not make contact, but he's well off the pace in the Hutchinson Insurance Metal Center Racing Chevrolet as he again is well off the pace and appears he may be headed towards the pit area. Dean, and again under the caution flag situation, the cars on the lead lap lined up on the outside lane, and it looked like there was as many as 17 or 18 cars still on the lead lap. So again, a very competitive race event in contrast to some of the touring series that have visited Louisville Speedway in the past. Again, Steve Christian is the race leader, and right now we'll pick up a time interval between first and second place. And right now it appears to us that it is only about 2.5 car lengths right now back to the Ford Thunderbird, the Circle Bar RV Park Ford of Rick Crawford. So again, only about 2 car lengths separate first and second place. And then it is back to the third place running car of Scott Walters, and Walters is about 5 car lengths behind Rick Crawford running at third. So again, a very close race up near the front of the field. Running forward, it's the number 57, the Penrose Meat Snack Chevrolet of Mike Cope, but he has the lap car of Keith Gardner between him and Scott Walters. And then Hank Parker Jr., the son of the Bass professional fisherman, Hank Parker Sr. Jr. is in the field now in the number 5 spot. And then Ron Young rounds out the top 6. Cammy Joe Kirk running 7th. And then at 8th, unofficially, we have the number 28 machine of Kurt Huff, who has done a lot of modified racing here at Louisville Speedway on the 7/16 mile track. Then Roland Isaacs in the number 9 position unofficially. And then Chuck Winders rounding out the top 10. Now, Dean, it looks like the front hood on Chuck Winders' car is buckled back a bit. And I can only speculate that he may have made contact to another car out there. It doesn't look to be hampering his vision any, but he did sustain some minor damage to the front end of that car. Williamson out of Louisville, Kentucky is one of the final cars on the lead lap right now. Joe led 22 laps of last year's race event and again finished up in 10th spot, but right now he is on the tail of the lead lap, and the race leader Steve Christian is chasing him down as they head towards turns 1 and 2. Christian moving up to the outside of Joe Williamson to put him at least one lap down to the field, and he completes the pass over in turn number 2. Meanwhile, Rick Crawford is stuck in behind the number 48 machine for the moment as they move on to the front straightaway. Whoa, and it looks like Crawford tangled. Mike Cope is also spun. Yellow flag coming out as the front straightaway suddenly becomes a parking lot. It looked like the accident possibly occurred coming out of turn number 4 while Rick Crawford was attempting to overlap one of the slower cars. Those two cars tangled and made contact with the front straightaway wall. Mike Cope's car was also involved. However, it looks like both Crawford and Cope were able to pull around and free themselves from the accident. But the caution flag flies for a multi-car spin here on the front straightaway with 137 laps completed.
This machine, as the crew continues to work on that car, Bill Kimball Jr. continues out of this race. Bill Webb is out of this race.
Well, I tell you, and I don't know what happened there, but Joe Williamson definitely developed a push coming out of turn number 4. He was mixed in with the race leaders. They came to the starting line 3 abreast, and it definitely caused a traffic jam going into turns 1 and 2. Scott Walters was nearly caught up in that tangle, and I believe Scott lost a position. As a matter of fact, he lost the lead spot as Stephen Christian was able to get around Walters during that 3 abreast fiasco. And speaking of fiascos, we've got one over in turn number 3. One car bursting into flames. It's the number 25 after hitting the outside retaining wall over in turn number 3. That's Wayne Anderson out of Florida. His car hit the outside retaining wall after he tangled with a second car, and it looks like it might have been the number 4 of let's see, Ron Young, I believe, was the second car involved. The rescue workers are right on the scene, extinguishing the blaze over in turn number 3. But again, it was the number 25 machine of the number 25 up against the outside retaining wall over in turn 3 of Wayne Anderson out of Florida. The Porter Cable Power Tool Chevrolet erupted in flames after striking the outside retaining wall. And Dean, you know, judging by the angle which he struck the wall at, it probably collapsed the fuel pump on the right front of the engine. So that's what perhaps where the blaze developed. But the rescue workers are on the scene.
All right, just watch that situation as they will have a...
Let me see if I got a replay.
Big mess over there to try and clean up. Swooping on that immediately to try and minimize the amount of time. 149 laps now on the Gibson Racing Series board here at Louisville Speedway.
Keeping things in perspective here, it is we can only confirm that Scott Walters has made his pit stop during the race event. Now again, keep in mind pit stops are not a required motion of this race event. However, a 300 lap distance would be very tough to cover without a fuel stop at least, and perhaps a tire change. The cars of Isaacs, Winders, as well as Webb, again, we have no confirmation as to whether they have made pit stops yet. They may have remained on the racetrack and gained those positions simply by not having to make their pit stop and lose some positioning in the field. However, again, a good job tonight by the Louisville drivers at the halfway point of the race event, as 4 of the top 5 spots are held by Louisville Motor Speedway regulars.
Well, we do know that the race leader, Christian, did make a pit stop as he lost the battle out of pit road to Scott Walters. You can pretty safely say that Chuck Winters made a pit stop as the crinkle hood on his machine has been removed, so that's kind of safe to assume.
That's a good deduction there. Deduction. The hood is off of Winder's car, so definitely he had to have stopped to have that removed. How much fuel and if they put on tires or not, we didn't catch that as we're trying to capture the excitement of a 34-car race event here tonight at Louisville Speedway. The halfway point, 150 laps completed, and the number 0, the Bell South Chevrolet of Stephen Christian, is the race leader. The number 55 of Scott Walters runs at second. Roland Isaac, first car that I believe is at least 4 laps down. But again, we'll wait and see how they reline the field up. Now Gardner comes to the front of the field. He is only 2 laps down to the field, and again, by my reckoning, would start ahead of Toby Porter. But again, we'll wait for the NASCAR officials to line the field back up for the official restart.
All right, 153 laps now showing on our Racing Series board. Again, the yellow flag does count, and the finish of the race has to be green, then white, then checkered.
Exactly. Under the NASCAR All-Pro Series rules, should there be a caution flag period near the end of the race must be restarted with a green flag, and then the white flag must be displayed, and then the checkered. And again, that's the way that they will they finish all the NASCAR All-Pros. From time to time do finish under caution flag situations should there be an accident or a need to display the yellow. This will finish under a green flag race condition. We're ready to go back green flag racing here tonight in the Kroger Bluegrass 300. Looks like Bill Webb definitely has the part of his undercarriage dragging, and he whips it around and pulls right into the pit area. Bill Webb of Jeffersonville, Indiana, and the Admiral's Anchor Chevrolet in the pit area, but it looks like it could be a lengthy stop as they will try to make some modifications to that car. Well, just as we said, they were running so well in the top 5 in the running order, but already Bill Webb has visited the pit area, and now Chuck Winders pulls down pit road in car number 8, the Phillips Lighting Racing Chevrolet. Race leaders move out of turn number 4, and down the front straightaway as Chuck Winders returns to racing action. Josh Clemens of New Albany, Indiana, now pulling from pit road, and it looks like he'll get back in the race event as well. They're in single file moving around slower lap traffic, but Steve Christian in the number 0, the Bell South Chevrolet out of Sugar Hill, Georgia, is the race leader now with 162 laps completed. Running at second, Louisville, Kentucky, Scott Walters, as he tries to make a maneuver down to the inside of Keith Gardner. Gardner is 2 laps down to the field, but separating first and second place. Walters trying to make his way around Gardner as they head back into turns 1 and 2. Running third, LaGrange, Kentucky's Roland Isaacs. A very strong race car under him tonight, as I believe Don Jackson had a brand new, recently installed Gertie racing engine put in that car for tonight's race event. And the number 49 moves off into turns 1 and 2. The Stouts Pick Pack Country Style Plaza Racing Chevrolet. Number 96 of Dan Matthews out of Raleigh, North Carolina is posted on the leaderboard in the number 5 position for the moment, as it looks like he's got a good run going here this evening as he pulls down the front straightaway, the Lacey Buffalo Racing Chevrolet. He's just ahead of Tammy Jo Kirk's number 52 as they move on. Trouble on the back straightaway, and it looks like it was the number 83 of Derek Gilchrist. He was running 4 laps down to the field, but he spun over on the backstretch area, facing the oncoming traffic now, and a possible caution flag situation exists there. 160, now 170 complete as the caution flag comes out.
Our 6th caution flag of the evening, caution flag number 6. That's the number 86 of Derek Gilchrist. It's moved around on the back straightaway. Derek Gilchrist, that's not his number though, it's the number 83 of Derek Gilchrist. He brings out the caution here as he got looped around. He had fired the machine as the engine was running. He was just not able to get back in to the thick of things. So there, caution flag number 6 flies this season here at Louisville Speedway.
Well, it looks like at one time that was a 1996 Pontiac Grand Prix, but it looks like he's seen a little action earlier here tonight, as well as the entire front section of the bodywork of that car has been missing from that machine. Again, after being involved in an earlier altercation, again, he spins on the back straightaway. It looks like he's restarted the car, though, and has rejoined the field. We're 171 laps into tonight's running of the Kroger Bluegrass 300. The number 0 of Stephen Christian is the race leader. He's out of Sugar Hill, Georgia, the Bell South Chevrolet. Running at second, it's the number 55 machine of Scott Walters. And again, he's not letting Christian get very far out from him there. However, he's been forced to contend with longtime friend and competitor Keith Gardner. Gardner is 2 laps down to the field, but has separated first and second place throughout this last series of green flag laps. Walters, a former winner of this Bluegrass 300 when it was held in 1990 on the 3/8 mile short track, before the 7/16 mile track was built. And in 1991, he launched his Touring Series career, eventually becoming the NASCAR Slim Jim All-Pro Series Rookie of the Year. And again, he's done a lot of racing on the Touring Series circuits, has competed some with the American Speed Association, but again, I believe his home is with the NASCAR Slim Jim All-Pro Series. Tonight, he collected his first Busch pole position, and running second now with 172 laps completed. He definitely has a shot at a victory tonight. Yeah, I've been watching that battle back at 4th and 5th spot as Dan Matthews out of Raleigh, North Carolina has gotten around Roland Isaacs for the number 4 spot. Isaacs has dropped back about 4 or 5 car lengths now from Matthews as they head back into turns 1 and 2. It looks like Chuck Winders, who has made a pit stop, has returned to the race and now has gotten around Isaacs, but imagine Winders is running on a little fresher tire than Isaacs is at this point in the race event. However, a good run here tonight for Roland Isaacs, again, still on the leaderboard in the number 5 position, but I think he'll have some company here pretty soon as the number 99 of Pete Silva is just behind him, as well as Tammy Jo Kirk out of Dalton, Georgia in the Lovable Racing Chevrolet, and it looks like she's closing in on Isaacs as well as they move on to the back straightaway. Tell you what, Dean, we've really got a battle developing and shaping up for that lead spot as Stephen Christian leads the field back into turns 1 and 2. Scott Walters is staying right there with him. He's not letting him get but about a car length and a half or 2 just ahead of him as they continue to chase down some slower lap traffic. Stephen Christian's going to have to be careful moving around this pack of cars as they move on to the back straightaway area, because if he makes one slip, Scott Walters will be right on him and challenging again for the lead spot. They're over in turn number 4 as they move down the front straightaway. .190 laps completed here tonight in the running of the Kroger Bluegrass 300. 191 now showing on the scoreboard as again the top 2 cars have now pulled away from the rest of the field. Stephen Christian, again out of Sugar Hill, Georgia, the race leader, moving on to the front straightaway. And Scott Walters from Louisville, Kentucky, just about a car length behind as they move into turns 1 and 2. They confront some slower traffic on the back straightaway now, pulling up to the outside of Spanx Overbeck out of Cincinnati, Ohio, as they move over to turn number 3 and then back onto the front straightaway. They move in behind Kurt Huff in the number 28 machine to put him at least a lap down to the field. Stephen Christian moving up to the high side of Huff and completes the pass over in turn number 2 just as Huff's car broke loose. Dropped down to the infield for a moment and then back up onto the track. Walters safely made the pass on him as well. They're back into turns 1 and 2, and it's a great 2-car shootout for the lead right now. A distance back, and I would put it at about a third of a lap, we find Mike Cope, the 3rd place running car, and then he is followed by the number 96 machine, according to the scoreboard, of Dan Matthews out of Raleigh, North Carolina. But Matthews is a ways back from Cope, and then rounding out the top 5, it's the number 99 of Pete Silva from Leicester, North Carolina. So that's the way the top 5 look now as we approach the 200 lap mark here in about 3 or so laps. really experienced, Dean, about 4 caution flag periods. We've had 6 now, a total of 6 in this 200-lap race event. Just about a little more than a half of the caution flag periods we experienced at this juncture of the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race event. So again, these cars are adapting much better to the 7/16 mile. At least there hasn't been as many errors, mistakes, or accidents to cause the caution flags as we experienced in the Ford Dealers 225 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race event. But on the other hand, given the height requirements of a pickup truck, they would seem like they'd be a little bit harder to navigate around a tight and challenging race course such as the Louisville Motor Speedway. Again, we've noticed the interval now between second and third spot. Mike Cope, who was once about a third of a lap behind the race leaders but running third, has closed that interval up now to about a quarter of a lap, the distance now between second and third position. Stephen Christian moving in trouble in turn 1, Spanks Overback and a second car spinning, but again minimal contact to either the wall or the other car. But again, it looks like we've got one car stalled down on the inside apron of the first turn. To about a quarter of a lap, the distance now between second and third position. Stephen Christian moving in trouble in turn 1, Spanks Overback and a second car spinning, but again minimal contact to either the wall or the other car. But again, it looks like we've got one car stalled down on the inside apron of the first turn. Back underway in the Kroger Bluegrass 300 here tonight at Louisville Motor Speedway as the number 0 of Stephen Christian leads the field back into turns 1 and 2. Well, Dean, what was started out as a major stock car racing event and the premier stock car racing event of the 1996 racing season has become a 25-lap shootout to the finish. This is Saturday night racing at its finest here tonight at Louisville Speedway as Stephen Christian in car number 0 leads the field over to turn 3, and he heads Scott Walters now by about 6 car lengths. He's letting it all hang out, so to speak, as he leads the field back into turns 1 and 2, builds it up 10 car lengths over Scott Walters. Tammy Jo Kirk in the number 52 now at third pulls free of Roland Isaacs down to the inside and now has pulled within about 3 or 4 car lengths of Scott Walters, which I raise the question now is Walters experiencing engine problems in that machine? As he heads into turns 1 and 2, Walters trying to hold on for second, but Tammy Jo Kirk is right there as she pulls down to the inside.
Really patient. Great start.
Parker Jr. drives underneath Scott Walters, and he'll take away third spot as they move down the back straightaway area. Meanwhile, it's Stephen Christian out front driving a bulletproof race car here tonight at Louisville Speedway. The big question is, does Tammy Jo Kirk in the lovable Chevrolet have time enough to catch the Bell South Racing Chevy Monte Carlo? They're out of turn 4 on the front straightaway. 285 in the books. We're 15 away from a finish as they move back into turns 1 and 2. It's about a 25 car length separation between first and second place. All Stephen Christian has to do now is be very patient with the slower lap traffic, and he'll be driving that car to victory lane here tonight. They continue to circle the Louisville Motor Speedway, just watching George Ingles' car out of Lakeland, Florida, go into turns 1 and 2. A plume of smoke beginning to show from the number 17 machine, George Ingles, going into turns 1 and 2. NASCAR may be black flagging that car as we now have 10 laps remaining. We hope that Ingles' machine is not laying down any oil or debris on the track. 290 complete. The race leader, Stephen Christian, in the Bell South Racing Chevrolet. The race leader as he moves out of turn 4, 291 complete. Tammy Jo Kirk is now beginning to cut into that interval between first and second. It was once about 20 car lengths. Actually now it's become about a 15 car length advantage over Tammy Jo Kirk. They're onto the front straightaway another time. And again, Stephen Christian is being very, very patient with this lap traffic as he overlaps George Ingles, smoking number 17. 8 to go here tonight at Louisville Speedway. That interval is getting cut down to about 8 car lengths. Tammy Jo Kirk is coming on in the lovable Chevrolet. Problems on our race leader, Dean Taylor.
It looks like he's cut down on front tires. Sparks coming from the machine. He is definitely back off the bases. Kirk is going now around the back of the lead. The sparks continue. Tammy Jo Kirk, now your new race leader.
Tammy Jo Kirk out of Dalton, Georgia, takes over the lead spot with only 6 laps to go in the race event. Our race leader, Stephen Christian, has cut down a right front tire on that machine, and an entire crowd here on the front straightaway at Louisville Speedway is on their feet as Tammy Jo Kirk in the lovable Chevrolet out of Dalton, Georgia, inherits the lead spot with only 5 laps to go.
5 laps to go.
The interval now between first and second place, only a car length now, as the number 86 of Hank Parker Jr. closes in behind Tammy Jo Kirk, and there's a lot of slower lap traffic right ahead of our race leaders. They're down into turns 1 and 2 and onto the backstretch area. Hank Parker Jr. in the number 86 keeping the pressure on Tammy Jo Kirk now with the white flag coming out this time around. The race leaders are out at turn number 4.
Parker is now on the long even side. She is now moving on around as he has made a pass on her. He gets down to the window, but still Hank Parker Jr. out in front, and that's how they're going to come in line, right? Out of turn number 4, they come to the checkered flag, and the Kroger Bluegrass 300 is won by Hank Parker Jr. and the Delco Voyager Racing Chevrolet. Scott Walters takes home third, and the number 57 machine rounds out your top 4. That is Mike Coe. All right, we had the the track microphone.
Okay, boy, I tell you what, we just didn't hardly know who was going to come away with the victory in this one here tonight. First of all, Stephen Christian developed a flat right front tire on that car with less than 10 laps remaining. Then Tammy Jo Kirk took over the lead position there with about 2 laps to go. It was Hank Parker Jr. chasing down Tammy Jo Kirk, making the pass on the back straightaway area on the inside, and then drove the Delco Voyager Racing Chevrolet to victory here tonight at Louisville Speedway. Climbing out of the car now at this point on the front straightaway, and I believe Ed Atlas will have a word with our race winner here very shortly.